Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. This is chapter 5 for major finance fin 702. We'll be starting today the first chapter of our final semester. The chapter refers to the central bank in Bangladesh, and we'll be learning some crucial functions and some basic features of central bank in our country. So usually a central bank refers to an authoritative financial institution responsible for regulating and overseeing a country's monetary policy, currency issuance, and financial system stability. Central banks play pivotal roles in managing a nation's money supply, implementing monetary policies to achieve macroeconomic objectives like controlling inflation, fostering economic growth, and maintaining financial stability. Additionally, they often act as lenders of last resort to commercial banks, supervise the banking sector, and may oversee foreign exchange reserves and regulate the overall financial industry within their respective countries. Bangladesh Bank, the central bank and apex regulatory body for the country's monetary and financial system, was established in Dhaka as a body corporate-wide the Bangladesh Bank Order 1972 with effect from 16 December 1971. At present, it has 10 offices located in several places in our country, which and total manpower stood at 5,807 officials as on March 31, 2015. So let's talk about key functions of central bank. Monetary and financial sector regulator is the main job of the bank. Formulation and implementation of monetary and credit policies, regulation and supervision of banks and non-bank financial institutions, promotion and development of domestic financial markets, management of the country's international reserves, issuance of currency notes, regulation and supervision of payment system. Implementation of Foreign Exchange Regulation Act is also one of the main key functions of Bangladesh Bank or any central bank. As government and financial institutions support, the Bangladesh Bank act as banker to the government. It manages a deposit insurance scheme, and also it functions as collection furnishing of credit information, and and they work as financial crime prevention oversight authority of money laundering Prevention Act. So moving on to the organogram of Bangladesh Bank, we can see the head of the Bangladesh Bank is the governor, and under him there are many more. Deputy governor works directly under the governor. Executive director, chief economist work under the deputy governor. And similarly, we can see many more directors, also directors, and similarly the hierarchy goes on and on. So these are just the organogram to know, nothing to memorize here. We just let the students know that the higher authority is the governor, and the last step is the MLSS or the Jamadar in the Bangladesh Bank. Moving on to the Bangladesh Monetary Policy Statement, MPS for financial year 2024. Over the previous 3.5 years, the global economy has encountered the substantial obstacles such as the COVID-19 pandemic, we can say, and the Russia-Ukraine war. Central banks globally have adopted policy tools to address these difficulties, initially employing accommodative monetary policies such as low policy rates and quantitative easing, and then shifting to contractionary monetary policies through policy rate increases. Nevertheless, the COVID condition has exhibited a substantial amelioration, promoting the World Health Organization to officially declare the termination of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2023. Bangladesh Bank has implemented several policy measures to tackle these difficulties, such as curbing inflation, enhancing the current account balance, regulating exchange rate volatility, stabilizing the financial sector, and also fortifying the capital market. In order to accomplish these goals during the first half of the fiscal year 2023, Bangladesh Bank will implement a contractionary monetary policy approach together with targeted policy measures. Initially, Bangladesh Bank will shift its approach from focusing on monetary targets to focusing on interest rates, especially by setting a target policy interest rate of 6.5% This will be accompanied by a plus or minus 200 basis points systematic corridor consisting of a standing lending facility SLF rate at 8.5 and an SDF rate at 4.5%. Furthermore, Bangladesh Bank plans to implement a market-oriented benchmark lending rate for all in categories of Bangladesh bank loans, abolishing the previously enforced lending rate limit. The objective of this action is to bolster or to enhance the competition in the banking industry and cultivate a favorable lending climate for both firms and consumers. Furthermore, Bangladesh Bank will implement a standardized and market-oriented system where a single exchange rate regime will be adopted. This would enable the exchange rate between Bangladeshi taka and US dollar as well as other foreign currencies to be set by market dynamics. Finally, Bangladesh Bank will compute and release gross international reserves in accordance with the 6th edition of the IMF's Balance of Payments and International Investment Position Manual, while also monitoring the present methods of calculating and reporting total foreign assets. During the last 4 decades, both theory and empirical evidence have suggested that the more independent a central bank, the more effective monetary policy is. So, for this course, as a major, we need to learn about some in-depth knowledge about every topic we learn, not only just what central banks do, how central banks are, what Bangladesh banks do and what do not. So we should not confine ourselves to learn that. Rather, we should move towards our critical thinking, towards a thought-provoking topic like, should Bangladesh Bank or should any central bank be independent or not? So to discuss that, there are 2 key dimensions of central bank independence. The first dimension, goal independence, which encompasses those institutional characteristics that insulate the central bank from political influence in defining its monetary policy objectives. The second dimension, instrument independence, refers to the ability of the central bank to freely implement policy instruments in its pursuit to meet its monetary goals. The degree of independence of central banks depends largely on the preferences and circumstances of each notion. So the main argument for central bank independence focuses on potential inflationary biases that are likely to exert themselves as a result of political pressure to boost output in the short run, mainly before elections, in order to finance government spending to lower unemployment and interest rates. This is apt to lead to a political business cycle in which these expansionary monetary policies are reserved after the election to limit inflation, unnecessarily leading to macroeconomic instability or booms and busts. Another argument for central bank independence is that the public not only generally distrusts politicians in regard to making politically motivated decisions, but also due to their lack of expertise in conducting monetary policy. According to principal agent problem, both politicians and the central bank have incentives to act in their own interest rather than that of the public. Yet, the principal agent problem is worse for politicians who have fewer incentives to act in favor of public interest. Thirdly, politicians often opt for more central bank independence, especially when there is disagreement between policymakers regarding unpopular macroeconomic decisions. In this case, politicians can grant more independence to the central bank in order to avoid public criticism. This was the case in many EMEs that were forced to float or liberalize the domestic currencies in order to gain integration with global finance markets. While this was definitely in the long run public interest, central banks took the blame for the massive inflationary pressures due to higher costs of imported commodities. The high correlation between macroeconomic and price stability, on the other hand, and central bank independence, on the other hand, has led to a remarkable trend to enhance central bank independence globally. Many of the aforementioned drawbacks have been tackled in order to ensure that central banks do not deviate from the do not deviate from the overall socio-economic goals of the nation. Most central banks have been made accountable to their parliaments, and they're required to become more transparent about their operations by publishing minutes of their decisive meetings and communicating their policies to the public. Also, after the global financial crisis, financial and monetary agents are increasingly coordinating their policies and decisions. While the Fed has historically been more independent than almost all the central banks, the structure and the level of political independence of the European Central Bank make it even more independent. Even central banks that have been traditionally subject to intervention of the Ministry of Finance, such as the Bank of England and the Bank of Japan, have been granted more independence in the 90s of the last century. So, as we have discussed, should banks be more independent or independent? You, as a student, must decide should the banks be independent or not. So thank you very much for today's class. Inshallah, we'll be seeing you in the next class with a new chapter or with new topic. Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.